Welcome everyone. In this explainer, we're going to break down two really foundational concepts from applied behavior analysis, the stimulus and the stimulus class. You'll see that understanding this distinction is absolutely essential to understanding how our environment influences our behavior.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll set the stage by asking what controls behavior in the first place. Then we'll get into the specifics of a single stimulus and how we group them into what we call stimulus classes. After that, we'll look at the different types of classes, and we'll wrap up by talking about why this whole distinction is so important in the real world.
Okay, let's dive right in. Before we can really unpack these terms, we have to start with a much bigger question. What is it that actually influences our actions from one moment to the next?
I think this phrase just frames the whole relationship perfectly. Our actions, which are our behaviors, are basically our response to everything that's happening around us and even inside of us. And all those events, both external and internal, are the stimuli that end up shaping everything we do.
So, let's start with our first key term and build from the ground up. We're going to begin with the most fundamental piece of this entire puzzle, the single stimulus. All right, so here is the precise academic definition. A stimulus is any single detectable event that our senses can pick up on. Just think of it as one unit of information coming from the environment. A flash of light, a particular sound, a shift in temperature, anything that has the potential to influence behavior. Now, as you can probably see from these examples, stimuli really fall into two main buckets. They can be external, meaning they exist outside of our bodies, like a red light or the smell of pizza, but they can also be internal, things like a stomach ache or that sharp pain in your foot. Both are distinct events that our body detects and can, of course, react to.
So now that we have a pretty good handle on what a single stimulus is, how do we start to organize these countless individual events into bigger, more meaningful groups? Well, this is exactly where the idea of a stimulus class comes into play.
So a stimulus class, it isn't just one thing. It's a whole collection of individual stimuli that are all related in some specific identifiable way. They're grouped together either because they share some common features or, as we're about to see, because they have a very similar effect on our behavior.
This analogy illustrates the concept perfectly. Think about it. A specific red car you see on the street is one stimulus. A blue bicycle is another. A yellow bus is a third. They all look completely different, right? But we group them together into the stimulus class of vehicles because they all share a common function. They're all used for transportation.
So, to really boil it down, a stimulus is the single instance, one specific car. A stimulus class is the entire category it belongs to, the whole group of things we call vehicles. It's kind of like the difference between a single point of data and the entire data set it belongs to.
Now, these groupings aren't just random. In behavior analysis, there are actually three distinct ways that individual stimuli can be organized to form a class, and it's all based on what they have in common.
Okay, so the first way is by their physical features, or what we call formal similarity, like grouping together all red objects. The second is by their timing or temporal relationship. Think about how lightning is pretty much always followed by thunder. And the third, and for our purposes the most important one, is by their function, meaning they have the same effect on behavior. A doorknob and a keycard look nothing alike, but they both function to open a door.
And this quote right here, this gets to the absolute heart of applied behavior analysis. While the form of a stimulus, what it looks like or when it happens, is important, its function, what it does to behavior, is what truly matters most. This is really the guiding principle for creating effective behavior change.
So you might be thinking, why do we need to be so precise with all this language? Why is the difference between a single stimulus and a whole stimulus class so important? Well, let's explore the practical application.
So, why does this all matter? Well, it's because understanding stimulus classes is the key to teaching flexible, real-world skills. We want behavior to generalize. For instance, if a child only sits down when their mother says sit down, they've only learned to respond to a single stimulus. But if we can teach them to respond to the stimulus class of the instruction, sit down, no matter who says it or how they say it, then we've created a truly functional and flexible skill. It helps us figure out what's really controlling behavior and lets us create interventions based on function, not just form.
To leave you with one last thought, I think this musical analogy just captures the idea beautifully. A stimulus is a single, distinct sound, but a stimulus class, that's like a chord, a rich combination of different notes that, when they come together, produce a unified behavioral or even emotional effect.
So as we close out, I want you to take a moment to consider this question. What groups of stimuli guide your own actions every single day? Maybe it's the stimulus class of work cues, your laptop, your coffee, the time on the clock. Or maybe it's the class of relaxation cues, a comfy chair, a good book, some quiet music. Recognizing these classes in our own lives is the first step to understanding the really elegant ways our environment shapes who we are.